Hey, Steven here from TechMaker.tv. In this episode, I wanted to do a little bit of exploration into Action Cable with Rails 6. I'm going to be doing some more videos in the very near future that go into stuff you can build with Action Cable, but in this one, I just want to explore the fundamentals. So I'm running Rails 6.0.2.2, and I'm just going to create a new Rails app called AC Explorer for now. And so essentially what this is going to be is just a very, very bare bones example, but it's going to show you how the data moves around and help you get a sense for exactly why all of this works the way that it does. In theory, I'm still kind of learning myself, so hopefully we can get somewhere useful with this video. I'm going to go ahead and pause this while this finishes. Okay, so let's go ahead and just CD down into that AC Explorer and then open up that code base here. And let's have a look at a couple of things really quick. So first of all, if you're watching or reading any tutorials that are a little bit older, they're going to tell you you need to configure a whole bunch of stuff, and I don't believe that's the case anymore with one exception. So if we open up cable.yml, so you can see here that in development we have this adapter async, and I have tried and not been able to get this to work just right. So what I'm going to do is just switch for Redis. So we can just change this to say adapter Redis and then URL, and then I'm just going to copy this one from down here in the production line. So they recommend you use Redis in production, and I guess that this async adapter for development is meant to make it quicker and easier, but I couldn't get it to work, so I don't know what's going on with that. If somebody knows, leave that down in the comments because I'd like to know what it is, but I haven't had the time to really dig into it too much. So if you don't have Redis and you're on Mac, you can do brew install Redis, not install Redis. And then once you have it, you need to run brew services start Redis. If you're on something else like Windows, you'll have to look up how to install Redis. But I've already done all of that, so I should already have Redis running, so that makes us ready to go with this. So let's go ahead and run a command. So if you're not familiar with Action Cable at all, essentially what it is WebSockets for Rails, to put it as simply as humanly possible. So what we can do is something like, I think it's Rails G channel. So this is a new generator that they've added. And we'll just kind of stick with the classic simple example of the chat room. So let's say Rails G channel room, and let's check out what this makes for us. So you can see here that this started up a few new things. We're going to ignore the test thing for now. So we've got an app channels room channel.rb, and we've got a couple of things that we already had, this index and this consumer thing. We'll take a quick look at those, but we won't worry about it too much. And then we have this room channel.js. Okay, so let's start by looking at our room channel.rb. So that should be in our app channels room channel. So we basically just have a Ruby class that inherits from application channel or application cable channel. And then in our JavaScript directory channels, we now have a room channel. So it's calling this consumer subscriptions create, giving it a room channel argument, and then we have a few functions that are inside of this object here. So some of this may not be technically described perfectly, but I'm going to give you my sort of basic explanation. So a consumer is basically a person who is receiving data from a connection or a channel. A subscription is just a connection or a subscription to a particular channel for a consumer. So a consumer is just a user. It's a person sitting in front of the computer or in front of their phone or whatever. And then when you create a subscription, essentially you're taking that person and connecting them to a specific channel. Makes sense? And then these functions down here are sort of like life cycle events, essentially. So you've got a connected, this gets run as soon as the subscription is connected for the consumer. The disconnected is the opposite. And then whenever a message comes in through the channel, this received data gets called. So bear in mind, I mean, this is the JavaScript, right? So this is sitting on the front end. So on the back end, what's happening is we have this room channel, and essentially all we're going to do in this episode is take a look at this subscribed method, but essentially this is just setting up the channel. I won't lie to you, so as with many things in Rails when you first encounter them, some of this is still somewhat magical to me, so as I learn more I'll offer better explanations in future videos, but let's go ahead and dive in and see if we can get a quick example working. So I'm just going to uncomment this stream from some channel, and we're going to change this to be room channel. Okay, and pay careful attention because I believe that there's naming convention things happening here, as with most things in Rails. So we're saying create a subscription to room channel, and then up here we are stream from room channel. I assume that's probably connected in some way. Here, let's just console.log connected to room channel. Okay, and we probably don't need that comment, but I'm just going to leave it there. Okay, so with all of that in place, let's run a Rails server. And let's open up, I think I have a browser window open back here already. So let's move this around just a little bit to get a little more space, and let's open up, well, let's go to localhost 3000, and let's go ahead and open up our terminal down here. So I don't actually have anything happening because I need some routes, I think. So let's set up a quick controller here, Rails G controller, and then we'll just say pages index. Okay, and that's good. And then we'll start our server back. And then in our routes, let's say root pages index. And then over here, let's refresh. And if our server has started back, we should be on root index now, or pages index. Okay, and then let's check our console here. So nothing happening yet. So one thing I forgot to do is in the gem file, we need to add Redis. And so let's go back over to the terminal, stop the server, bundle. Okay, so it says I'm using Redis 4.1.3. Okay, so that's good. Start our server back. Let's just keep an eye on this for a second here. We'll restart. And so I think that was just the problem, is we didn't actually have Redis installed, so it couldn't transmit anything. So now we can see here in our terminal that we've successfully upgraded, blah, blah, blah. Room channel is transmitting, and room channel is streaming from room channel. And then back over here in the browser, we can see down in the JavaScript console, we've console.log connected to room channel. Okay, so let's do some more interesting stuff. So we don't need the routes anymore. Let's leave open that room channel.rb. And so what I want to do really is actually just play around with receiving data. So in a lot of tutorials you're going to look at, they're going to kind of do a lot of UI stuff here, and I don't really care about that yet. What I actually just want to do is just see how do we pass data around. So if we console.log the data, we should be able to open up, and let me just make sure that I refresh this so that the room channel JS is reloaded. So if we go back over to our terminal, let's open up a new tab and run a Rails console. So in here, we should be able to say action cable. So we can talk directly to like these objects, right? So we can say action cable.server. And then in here, we can say action cable. I just kind of looked at that to see what all was in there, but we can do action cable.server.broadcast. And then we just need to give it the name of the channel. So room channel. And then I'm going to give it, let's just give it an object. Let's say like message hello. And so you can see immediately that this gets sent over into our browser console. So that's essentially the entire flow. I think it's telling us here how many people it sent that to, or what's the consumers that it sent that to. Let's actually try to set up another, just an incognito window here. go to localhost 3000, open up the developer tools down here. It says it's connected to the channel. I'm just going to make this ridiculously small up here. Move that down. Okay, so now we can see both, and then let's run that again. And no, it's not telling us how many people it sent it to. It's just, I don't know what the 1 means, but you can see here that we're getting this out in both places now. So this is cool and everything, but I want to take this a little bit further because I've always been a little bit bothered because this isn't really a realistic situation. What we really want to do most of the time is have like specific chat rooms in this place, or in this case. And in order to do that, we need to set up 2 things. So what we can do, if you look at what we did here with action cable, server broadcast, room channel, you could put any text you want in here, and it will broadcast that message to that channel. But there's nothing connected to that right now, so it won't do anything. So what I'm going to do is actually say underscore, and then there's a params object that this has access to, similar to a controller. So we can do string interpolation in here if we have double quotes, and we can say params, and let's just call it like room ID. So now back in our room channel JS, so now what this is going to do, this is flexible now. Now you can actually pass in a different ID in different situations and have different like separated rooms, right? So what we can do for now, we're just going to hard code this for the moment. But what I'm going to do is actually say, instead of just saying room channel here, what we can do is pass in an object and specifically label this and say, okay, this is the channel param. And then I'm going to pass in another param of room ID, and we'll say just like the number 1. Okay, and then we'll need to comma separate that, and over here, so we have room channel, room ID, so all that matches. And then let's refresh this one. Okay, and then back over in our terminal, let's execute this, what we did before with room channel 1. Okay, so you can see how that works. But how can we actually split this up so that we are able to dynamically pick the room ID? So first of all, let's see if we can make this work like this. So let's see if we can make this work where this only runs after the page has loaded, because right now, if you look in application.js, which I was just doing, so we're just requiring this channels, which is calling this index.js here, I think, const channels require context, which is doing some regex and loading anything named underscore channel.js. So what I want to find out is if I can do something like document.add event listener, and then let's listen for turbo links load, and let's see if we can bump all of this stuff up in there and have that still work as we expect. So let's refresh this thing, and still telling us we're connected to our channel. And let's go back over here and broadcast again to room 1, and we're still getting our message. So that works, that's good. So we're gonna kind of iterate through something, and it's gonna sort of work out exactly how rooms will work here. So I'm gonna open up pages index really quick, and I'm just gonna put in here a div with an ID of room ID, and then I'm gonna say data room ID equals 1. Okay, then back in here, just inside of add event listener turbo links load, I'm gonna say const room ID equals let's see, document dot get element by ID, and then we're gonna say room ID. Is that what I called that? no, with a dash. Okay, so that's going to get us that element, and then we can say const, actually, let's call that element, and then we'll just say const room ID equals element dot get attribute, and let's call it what is it, data room ID, and let's just console.log room ID really quick right here to see what's happening. Okay, and let's just refresh this thing and see where we are. So we're logging out room ID. Cool. So then what we're going to do here is connected. So first of all, what I want to do is print out something like connected to room channel plus room ID to keep that there. And then here I'm going to put room ID. So let's refresh now and see if we're still working. Connected to room channel 1. Then over here, let's see if we can still broadcast to room channel 1. Yep, perfect. So we're not going to build out everything that you would need for a chat room, but I'm going to finish out one thing on the back end just so we can kind of complete the circle here. So I'm going to create a new controller, and it's going to be called rooms, and it's going to have just a show action. Okay, and what did I do? Could not find controller. Perfect. Let me just learn how to spell really quick. Still not controller. Okay, and let's jump back over here into our controller. So we'll go rooms controller, and then we have a show action, and then what I'm going to do is just say at room ID equals params room ID. Okay, and then in my routes, I just need to make sure that room show is get rooms ID, and then we're going to point at the show action, and that should just be ID actually, not room ID. Okay, and then we need to open up rooms show, and I'm going to copy my same little snippet from here, and let's pop this down in there. And then this, instead of that, is going to be at room ID. Okay, so now let's go to slash rooms slash 4. Okay, I didn't do something right. Where did I go wrong? My routes, get slash rooms colon ID. That should fix that. Missing action. Okay, and I need to, oh boy, it's a lot of syntax errors. Okay, there we go. So now we can see here we're connected to room channel 4. And if I open this up and we go back into our Rails controller, let's just cycle up and let's hit this with the number 4. And we can see that we're broadcasting hello. So now we can actually go and let's go to rooms 4. Let's broadcast the same message again, and they both get it. Now we can change this to 5. And he says he's connected to room 5, and then we can broadcast to channel 5, and only the top one gets it. So that's pretty cool, and you can see how that's essentially the basis for a chat application. So the only thing left to do really is hook up some actual database models so that people can create accounts, create messages, and create rooms. And yeah, so that's basically it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a more fully featured video in the next one, or in the next video that I do, the next episode, where we go into building out a real chat room with the front end. And I'll probably kind of gloss over some of the details that we covered here and just kind of assume that you went through all of this. So If you're interested in that, definitely subscribe to the channel. We'll be releasing that probably in the next few days. I'm planning to do a lot more stuff with Action Cable because I'm just kind of getting into it right now. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, and I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.